why does Reagan go along with these agreements with Red China, which he just did, to supply this technology? He's not a member of the order. Why does he respond to its stimuli?
Because you've got a group within the administration who are members, who are connected with the order. When you get a group of quite capable men working together, they can wear down opposition, they can erode opposition, because they're all kind of marching in step. If you get 3 men marching in step, they can do more than 20 men marching to their own step. Do I make my point here? Mm-hmm. And within the order, for example, or within the administration, you've got, for example, Mr. Bush, and the people around Mr. Bush, Mr. Baker, Chief of Staff in the White House. And gradually you've seen the weeding out of those individuals who are independent. They've either resigned or they've been moved out to other departments. So in effect the order has taken over very gradually, very carefully, without any fanfare.
How is the order then managing the conflict in the Middle East? It's hard to believe that the Arabs or the Iranians or the Iraqis are actually under anyone's control except their own.
I can't fully answer that today. Many of these questions you can only answer maybe 10 years later, when you can look at it in perspective. For example, I can look at Pearl Harbor today and see quite clearly a much different picture on Pearl Harbor than was put out in 1941. I can't look at the Middle East today and make too much sense, except you've obviously got 2 sides. You've got the Hegelian dialectic at work. You've got conflict being created, conflict being managed. The Marines go in, the Marines go out. Today, the Iraq is attacking the Iranian oil bases. You've got the deliberate 2 sides in these conflicts, the deliberate creation of conflict and the management of conflict.
Put it this way, is Castro in Cuba because the order wants him there?
Could I rephrase the question? Is Marxist Angola remaining a Marxist Angola because the order wants him? The answer there is yes. Because I know in Angola, the Gulf Oil Company is the biggest supplier of foreign exchange to Marxist Angola. Pull Gulf Oil out of there, there's no more Marxist Angola. I can't answer as clearly for Cuba.
So Gulf Oil wants Marxism?
Oh yes, it wants, undoubtedly.
And Marxism supports Gulf Oil?
Oh yes, in fact Cabinda, the Gulf Oil installation in Angola, is defended by Cuban troops. But you see, you've got an interesting phenomenon.
I think everyone should hear that one more time.
I said
Cuban troops.
Cabinda, which is the Gulf Oil installation in Angola, Marxist Angola, is defended by Cuban troops.
So here we have Cuban troops defending a capitalist monopoly.
So-called capitalist. But one of the first things you learn in this business is forget about capitalism versus communism. That is absolute nonsense. The two are, behind the scenes, are hand in hand.
It's a capitalist-communist conspiracy. One conspiracy.
Yes, but you need the so-called conflict between the two to keep people focusing. Look, keep you looking over there. You know, capitalism versus communism. You know, that makes a nice little picture. You know, you get books on it and films on it. Capitalism versus communism. That's not where the action is. The action is over here.
Well, what's the greatest single threat to the United States in terms of Central America, Nicaragua, El Salvador, the government of Mexico, that we need to be aware of in terms of an understanding that it is the order that is arranging things that are very detrimental to the future of this country?
Well, there you have a complex picture. Because it's not only a Marxist movement, it's also a rebellion against poverty, and there's bitter poverty down there, as we all know. I have to go across the border into Mexico to realize that. You have the intervention of certain religious groups, the Marian Sisters, the Jesuits. There's another conflicting factor down there. You have, for example, in Panama, where the Panama Canal was handed back to Panama, and there's a story behind that which involves the debts that Panama owed to the United States and the functions of Marine Midland Bank, and of course Sol Leiner was director of Marine Midland, was a negotiator down there. You've got a very complex picture in Central America. What it is the creation of turmoil. Out of it, we will either get bogged down in another war, or we'll get a series of Marxist states. But what we're heading into, I think, is an era where the order is willing to back some Marxist states but not others. It will back Marxist Angola. It tried to back Nicaragua for a while. It would not back Grenada. In other words, we're getting to a situation where the But you see, all this helps create conflict, helps perpetuate conflict. We never discuss what to me is elementary. All right, if these people are causing all the trouble in the world, we're not going to help them. We just cut off trade, we cut off technology, we cut off finance. Because the two key elements used to control these countries is debt and technology. So we'll cut off finance, we'll cut off technology. Marxism can't survive a decade without Western finance and Western technology. They'll crumble. But we won't do that. Why won't we do it? The only answer is we have to keep these systems going to create conflict.
So we mourn the shedding of blood of our Marines and their deaths when we ourselves are giving our blood and sweat every day of our lives to feed this international system.
International conflict system.
What do you think is the most important statement that you would like to give to the American people regarding the challenge they face in the order?
I think the challenge that they face affects not only their lives, but those of their children and their grandchildren. What can they do? I think first is understand what it's all about, to listen and to learn more. And then, as I've argued in one of my books, to develop their own individual plan. What role in their life, what are they going to do as individuals to thwart or to block in their own little way the purposes of the order? Whereas it may be joining an organization like yours, or maybe 1,000 different ways of doing it. So I think it's up to an individual to look at this and decide what he or she is going to do.
And also discover that there is strength in union and strength in numbers when tackling a Goliath of this proportion.
Yes, particularly I think psychological strength. I have no problems with acting alone, but I think most people do. I think most people prefer to have what you might call a peer group that thinks and acts as they do, and they maybe feel stronger. That's never particularly worried me. I always get worried when I find a lot of people are thinking as I do. I feel there might be something wrong with me. But I know it does worry most people. And so joining a group would undoubtedly be a good thing to do.
Well, how effective do you feel you've been as the Paul Revere of the 20th century?
I don't see myself as a Paul. I see myself purely as a researcher doing a job.
You're publishing books that are giving information that is sounding an alarm that the order is coming.
Well, that was not my purpose. My purpose was quite simple. There's a problem. No one's looked at it this way. All the answers I see are wrong. Let's see if I can find an answer which fits the facts. That has been my motivation. I'm basically a researcher, a problem solver.
So you've dissected a problem.
Yes.
But how have you solved the problem?
Oh, I haven't solved it. All I've said, hey, there's the problem. I've really created problems. Because what have I done? You've had this nice, beautiful view of the world, and then I come along and say, hey, that doesn't look like that at all. If we take this, that's what's happening.
So you're an iconoclast.
I've created more, yes, I've created more problems than I've solved.
Well, sometimes the flame of freedom has to do that, to destruct,
yes.
tear down,
yes.
and then finally build.
Yes, you have to know what you're fighting. And that is fairly clear in my mind at this point.
So in your own way, you are a prophet to the nation, and you're saying if you don't take a look at this problem and do something about it, it may swallow you up.
Exactly. What springs to my mind for some odd reason is the Essenes. What was it? The forces of darkness and the forces of light. That's the root of the problem.
Zarathustra defined it in the same way. Forces of good and evil.
Yes. That's what it comes down to. These people are evil, there's no question about that. What does this man, Hitler they called him at that time, what does this man Hitler want? What will he do? And because there was some discussion about whether they should back the communists in Germany. And then the agreement was to back the National Socialists because they could be manipulated into a war of revenge. At first the target was France, and then later it became the Soviet Union. They have no guarantee. They can make mistakes, and they've made many mistakes. There's no guarantee that you'll get conflict in 1990, 2000 between China and Russia. I mean, my argument is there's another way to look at this, that China and Peking and Moscow, the people are not stupid. I'd back a Russian planner any day of the week against a Yale graduate. I mean, I know the Russians. I mean, a number of my books have been on Russia. They are very, very ingenious and capable men. The chances are that China and Russia will get together against the United States. That's what well could happen.
In other words, the best laid plans of the order...
Getting off the stray.
The best laid plans of the order
can go astray, and have gone astray. They have no guarantees.
Well, these kingpins who move nations on their chessboards may one day find out that they themselves wind up in the jaws.
They will, or their children. Averell Harriman at 92 is not worrying, but some of them are.
Well, it seems to be the perpetual fate of the sorcerer's apprentice.
They're creating a monster, and
China, I don't know.
I don't think they realize it.
The Chinese will never be controlled by any Western minds. That is just a fact of the inscrutable East. Given power, they are probably the most clever of people on the planet. They only lack one thing, is power. And we are now giving it to them.
Financing and technology. I would agree with that. I think our plan, their plans, not ours. Their plans could go astray very easily.
Sure, because it's in the Soviets' interest and in Peking's interest to play the other two powers off against each other.
That's right.
So by that time, the Chinese and the Russians will know all about the order, thanks to your books, and they will not be about to allow Wall Street or the power behind Wall Street to determine their fate.
I think they are aware of the power of the order. Who went to visit Andropov? It was Bush. It was Harriman. The U.S. ambassador never had a private audience with Andropov. They are aware. The thing is, how are they going to play on the awareness of the world public? Now this has become public. How are they going to use that? How can they manipulate that? And I think they could.
Well, their game is to tell us they're going to deliver us from our overlords.
Exactly.
From
so
our
we
gods.
better do it ourselves first before they do it for us, because otherwise we'd be replacing one monster with another one.
Well, we have to identify ourselves as Americans and realize that they're enemies of the people, both within and without this nation. I think that some of our people tend to consider those who are the betrayers of America as Americans, and therefore to be anti-American.
They don't think of themselves as Americans.
No, but our people, the common people think that the members of the order in this country or the power elite are Americans, and then they tend to become anti-American or anti-the elite.
That's a great mistake.
It is.
Because they may historically have come from the Pilgrim Fathers, but they gave up being Americans 50, 60, 70 years ago.
Maybe they never were.
Well, maybe they never were. That's another story. Maybe they never were. I'm interested what's behind all this. Because if you get, say, 500 members of the order today in the United States, there must be a smaller group. 500 don't get together and decide things. There must be a small inner group. I identify Averell Harriman undoubtedly as being the godfather, the chairman, but the others must be dozens.
Who's the heir apparent to Averell Harriman?
I would say Bush. My guess is Bush.